It happened during dessert. The candles had barely finished flickering when I heard the gasp. My $2,700 anniversary cake, the one my wife had planned for months, lay splattered across the floor. And there stood my sister, with a smirk she tried to hide behind a shrug. "Oops," she said. I didn't say a word. But my brother leaned toward me and muttered, "You know how she is." Yes, I do know. She wanted a plot of land for her 22nd birthday. Expected it like it was her right. And when I said no, this was her answer. She waited for me to explode. But I didn't. I just bent down, picked up the sugar roses from the frosting, and quietly handed them to my wife, whose eyes said, "I'm sorry for inviting them." And in that moment, something in me shifted. I've watched this pattern for years. The spoiled tantrums, the excuses, the way they laugh after cutting you, because they know you won't bleed in front of guests. But this time, I didn't swallow it, because sometimes the most dangerous man in the room is the one who stays calm when everyone expects fire. So I smiled, sat down, and made a silent promise. She wouldn't see it coming. The night didn't get any easier. While the guests tried to pretend nothing had happened, I was already making decisions, silent but sharp. Later that evening, after the last guest left and the balloons hung limp from the ceiling, I sat down at my desk. The weight of what had happened settled like a stone in my chest. That cake wasn't just dessert, it was a symbol of patience, love, and years of hard work. But it was smashed because of entitlement. I opened my laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The lease cosign I had put my name on for her last month stared back at me. A foolish act of trust. The moving fund? Still untouched, waiting to be used for a fresh start. A start she clearly didn't deserve. I froze the funds. I canceled the lease. No warnings. No explanations. This was my silent stand. I thought about the way she smiled, like she had won some twisted game. But she hadn't seen the real play unfolding. Sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's a quiet freeze of a promise withdrawn, the cold refusal to enable selfishness. And I was done enabling. As the clock ticked past midnight, I felt a strange calm. A calm born not of peace, but of purpose. Tomorrow, everything would change. Not with shouts or fights, but with the quiet knock of reality. And when she woke up, her world would be a little colder. There's a unique silence that visits a house after a storm, the kind that lingers in the hallways and clings to the edges of memory. That morning, the silence felt heavy, almost sacred. I woke before the sun, couldn't sleep. My mind replayed last night's disaster in slow motion, the collapse of the cake, the laughter that wasn't laughter at all, the way my brother squeezed my shoulder as if that would make it better. I stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee. The kitchen window was still foggy from last night's warmth, but the air had cooled. I watched the street, waiting for something, maybe a sign that what I'd done was right. At exactly 9:42 a.m., the phone buzzed. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. I already knew who it was. My sister. She never called me this early. I could almost picture her face, surprised, annoyed, maybe even a little scared. I picked up the call. Her voice trembled, an edge in it I hadn't heard before. There's a problem with the account, she started. The usual arrogance now replaced with confusion. She asked if I knew anything. I took a slow breath. My words were measured, calm. "I think you'll have to sort this out yourself," I said, and then silence. I heard her trying to find her footing, searching for the brother who always solved her messes. But I was already gone. In that pause, between question and answer, I felt something shift, not in her, but in me. I set my mug down, looked at my own reflection in the window. For the first time in years, I didn't look tired. I looked free. Out on the porch, I sat with the morning sun on my face and listened as the world woke up, one sound at a time. A child's laughter, a neighbor's lawnmower, the gentle hum of a new day. But inside, something new was growing. A quiet resolve. A lesson I had waited a lifetime to learn. That sometimes, letting someone fall is the kindest thing you can do for yourself. By afternoon, the group chat lit up. You know the one, the family updates thread that rarely holds anything kind. First came the guilt-spiked curiosity. Did something happen with the bank? Her payment got declined. Maybe uncle forgot to transfer it. Then came the nudges. Polite at first, then edged with expectation. My brother sent me a private message. She's just a kid. Don't take it so personally. You've always been the strong one. Strong. That word again. Used so often to excuse others, to justify their recklessness, to silence the one who never asks for anything in return. I stared at the screen, heart still, mind loud. They didn't want truth. They wanted convenience. They wanted me to smooth it over, like I always did. But not this time. Because strength isn't swallowing every insult until your soul forgets how to speak. Strength is choosing silence, when your voice has always been their tool. I didn't respond. Later that day, my sister posted something online. A selfie. Perfect makeup. Crop smile. Captioned, "People only support you when you give them what they want." I smiled. Projection is a powerful thing. And yet, beneath the filters and captions, I could feel her spinning. She wasn't used to losing. Not when I was always there to catch her. But she forgot. You don't get to spit on the hands that built your staircase, and then ask them to hold you up again. That evening, I visited the land she wanted. The small plot with wild grass and an open view of the hills. I stood there alone. The wind was cold, but it didn't bother me. I pulled out my notebook, and slowly, carefully, I wrote a new name on the paperwork. It wasn't hers. And as I signed it, I didn't feel anger. I felt release. I remember the first time she fell. She was 7. Skinned her knee chasing a balloon I had tied to her wrist. She cried like the world ended. I picked her up, carried her inside, and told her, "You're safe. Big brother's here." She believed me. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe that moment planted a lie she grew up repeating. That no matter how far she pushed me, I'd always catch her. That love meant erasing consequences. That blood meant bending, no matter how much it cost me. I let her believe it. I let everyone believe it. Because being the good son, the patient brother, the strong one, meant biting your tongue, while others fed themselves on your silence. And for decades I did. I paid deposits, co-signed loans, sent birthday money when she forgot mine. They called it generosity. I called it guilt. Until this week. Until that cake, a symbol of love and time and effort, lay destroyed beneath her shoes. And she smiled as if grace was her birthright. It's strange what wakes a man up. It's rarely the big betrayals. It's the little ones, repeated for years, until you forget what respect is supposed to sound like. That night, I received a call. Not from her realtor. Apparently, she was still planning to move, counting on the funds I'd frozen. He asked if everything was still on track. I laughed. Quietly. Not bitter. Just amused. And I told him no. Not just about the money. About everything. Because sometimes, kindness is no longer kindness. It's enabling. And love, when abused, becomes a leash. I hung up the phone. Stood in front of the mirror. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't see the version of me they used. I saw the man I used to be. Before I forgot how to say no. I didn't tell anyone what I was about to do. That's the thing about true moves. They don't need an audience until the moment they land. The plot had been a symbol to her. Entitlement dressed as expectation. To me, it became a canvas. A few days after I walked that hill alone, I quietly arranged the paperwork. Not hers. Not for her. For the neighborhood kids, the ones who grew up on the wrong side of every charity letter, the ones I'd watched play in cracked sidewalks while the rest of the family looked away. In my late wife's name, I turned her demanded gift into a promise. A community garden, a scholarship orchard, a place where children could plant seeds and see something grow because someone believed they deserved to. I sent invitations under the guise of a family gathering to celebrate giving. A soft, elegant lie. Of course she came, with her practiced smile, with the same confidence that once expected a plot like a birthright. My brother beside her, steady in that old familiar posture, ready to smooth, to explain, to excuse. We stood on the cleared earth. The ribbon was tied. Neighbors milled, curious, murmuring about the surprise. I said a few words, simple, calm. Some gifts are taxes, I said, and some are legacies. Today, this ground pays forward what was almost taken in selfishness. She leaned in, scanning the plaque, as if the words might change if she stared hard enough. Carved in brass. In honor of the children with no promises, gifted by a man who chose to give, not because he had to, but because he remembered what it meant to be seen. Below it, in smaller type, dedicated in the name of Eleanor Jameson, whose quiet strength built this community. Her face shifted. Not the usual mask of entitlement. Something thinner rattled beneath. She opened her mouth, closed it. The crowd's polite applause hummed like a tide, and I watched her look for a foothold that wasn't there. My brother reached for her elbow. She pulled away. I heard her whisper, barely audible, to him, "This isn't what I asked for." He didn't reply. She had expected a corner of land, a token, her name on a deed. Instead, the ground she coveted was now a mirror, reflecting her own demand back at her, in front of people who'd seen the truth without being told. And in that silence, the twist landed. She wasn't the one being gifted to. She was the one exposed. The morning after the dedication, the air still buzzed, not loud, but thick. The garden was breathing. Kids were here before I was fully awake, planting, pointing, claiming. Neighbors who'd ignored that street for years now stopped and watched. The reporter called again. She wanted follow-up. What happened next? I gave her more than a soundbite. I gave her the whole frame. The cake, the demand, the years of quiet carrying their weight, and the moment I finally chose to redirect the inheritance of entitlement into something that fed a neighborhood instead of fed egos. She came, my sister. Perfect smile. Polished words. Sliding into the story like she owned the chapter. This was supposed to be mine, she said in public. Soft enough to draw sympathy, sharp enough to make people lean in. Then a boy, no filter, no adult diplomacy, stood and spoke. He gave us this. He didn't ask for anything back. Silence stretched. Not the awkward kind. The kind that makes you feel the truth settle in the room, like dust on an old shelf. Her smile thinned. My brother moved, ready to smooth. She whispered, "Handle it quietly." As if the past had never been written. As if the paper didn't already have ink drying. That evening, she came to my porch with the folder. Soft voice. "Let's shape the story. Old threats dressed as concerns. You don't want this out. I can help. We can fix how it looks." She thought I was still the man who'd swallow the cut and pretend it was a compliment. She didn't know I'd already played ahead. The piece was out. My confessions, flaws, silent enabling, the price of being strong for everyone else, were on record. It framed her expectations. It nailed her entitlement to the wall without naming her. She called after that. Measured. Controlled. "If you don't back down," she hissed, "I'll make your history the story." I listened. No defense. No apology. Just the sound of her own voice, fraying where she expected my silence to cushion her. She thought the last move was hers. She was wrong. I'd already set the stage. And now, she was the one scrambling to rewrite a narrative that no longer bent for her. She thought the last move was hers. She moved like a storm coming to reclaim a narrative she'd already rewritten in her head. She showed up at the garden's second celebration, this time with a different posture. No polished pretense. No soft threats. Just a smile stretched too thin, and eyes scanning for weakness. The reporter was there again. This time her notebook had a different weight. Questions already framed. My sister started to speak, to pivot the story toward misunderstood sacrifice, toward the old tale of how the family owed her. Her brother, quietly awkward now, hovered behind, the old safety net fraying. Then the children came forward. Not just one boy. A girl with dirt-smudged knees, a teenager who'd once been invisible, a woman who had brought her toddler to plant a seed weeks earlier. They didn't need a microphone. Their presence was the answer. "She wanted a plot," one of them said, looking straight at the camera. and he gave us a future. Another chimed in, he built something for us, not for his name. That's why he didn't need to fight for credit. The room shifted. The sympathy she sought evaporated like breath in cold air. People saw her, no longer the entitled sister, but the one trying to reclaim a stage she'd burned. My brother's face tightened. He didn't step forward. He didn't explain this time. She left quietly. No threats. No dramatic exit. Just a slow realization settling in. Her leverage was gone. The legacy she tried to twist into a prop for herself had already been claimed by those who needed it most. The plot she demanded, the same one she believed she was owed, was now a foundation others leaned on. Her voice, when she reached me later, was small. I can fix it, she offered, the old rhythm desperate. I poured her a cup of coffee, like always. I slid the cup across the table and said, the only thing broken here is expectation. Fix that first. She didn't ask again. She didn't push. And I didn't call her. Weeks later, I stood at the garden while a child planted a sapling. The sun was warm. The laughter around me was unforced, real. I thought about all the years I'd kept quiet, thinking silence was safety. I was wrong. The real justice was never loud. It was quiet. It was watching what she wanted become something that fed hungry hands, and knowing I didn't have to take it back to keep my peace.